Jason, I have, oh, we're not quite. Let's see, how many we got? Oh, here we go.
Martha. Yeah, we have a quorum. Oh,
Yep.
Deb's here too.
Take it away, Jason.
Okay. Okay. Okay, good evening. This meeting is being recorded, so just so you know. As a preliminary matter, my name is Jason Molina, chairperson of the committee. Please permit me to confirm all members and staff are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rajesh? Not present. Deb? We cannot hear you. I can see you, but if you could unmute, please. It's still muted.
Wasn't letting me unmute it, but it finally did. I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Melanie? If all members can just get their mics ready to announce themselves, please.
I'm here.
Okay, Melanie, thank you. Martha?
Here.
Thank you. Gail?
Present.
Thank you. Steve?
Present.
Jim is not able to attend tonight, and Kathy?
Here.
All right, thank you very much. And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Bernie?
Present.
Rowan?
Present.
Thank you very much. Okay, good evening. This open meeting of the Community Preservation Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Senate Bill 2475, signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021. This meeting of the Community Preservation Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. The legislation allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Community Preservation Committee is convening by Google Meets, posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Anyone else who is not on this meeting, please be sure to press *6 to mute your device. And the meeting will not feature any public comment. Please wait until I open the item for public comment, if I do so, and press *6 to unmute your device. And finally, each vote will be taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. All right, that concludes the preliminaries, and we'll get on to the agenda. All right, we have a call to order. We have a quorum. The first order of business is to review and approve the December 13th, 2021 meeting minutes. Are there any questions or comments relative to the meeting minutes that are posted onto our Google Drive? Okay, not seeing any hand waving or hearing anybody. With that, I'll take a motion to accept the meeting minutes as posted to the Drive.
So
Second.
Thank you very much. The motion has been moved and seconded. All those in, oh, sorry, I have to do a roll call. Sorry. All right, we're going down the line here. Rajesh is not here, so he's not able to vote on that. Deb?
Yes.
Thank you. Melanie?
yes.
Thank you. Martha?
Yes.
Thank you. Gail?
Yes.
Thank you. Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Jim is not present. Kathy?
Yes.
Thank you. And myself, yes. Okay, minutes have been approved. Okay. Next order of business is the review of the draft Community Preservation Committee annual report. There was a revised version that was submitted by Rowan later today, and so that we'll take comments and questions about the annual report at this time. Has anybody not read it? Then we can fill it in at this point. Fill you in. All right.
I guess I have a question. Is that
Sure.
is the annual report what we worked on, over the past month, or is the annual report something new that just came out today?
The annual report was drafted a week ago, and then it was another version of it was submitted today. The annual report was created by Bernie and Rowan, the first draft, and then Melanie, myself, and Deborah got together to just make a small edits to it to further revise and make it available for our discussion tonight. And the annual report is what goes into the town's annual report that gets binded for all the boards and committees at the end of the year. Just
Can
if
someone put it
I'm
up on
wrong,
the screen so we can, I mean, am I the only one that has no idea if I've read it or not? Because I don't know exactly what
Sure,
you're referring to.
would you mind please sharing it? And Bernie or Rowan, is this tonight's not the final night of this, right? Do we have another opportunity to amend it further if there's a need?
The deadline is February 1st to have it submitted to the town manager's office. So this is probably the last chance to do it as a committee. If somebody sees anything they would like omitted or amended or changed, you can reach out to Rowan individually and just let her know. And we'll probably run it by Jason just to make sure he's on board with it. Just to summarize, I think Jason already did a good job saying it, but I'll just repeat. Every year, the town comes up with an annual report for all of its boards and committees, as well as its departments, to just kind of let the people of Shrewsbury know what each of those departments or committees or boards have been up to in the previous year, and to let them know in a little ways what they can expect coming up, but mostly what's happened previously, just to give people a quick overview of what's happened in town. So there'll be another one every year hereafter, now that CPC is up and running. And like I said, it doesn't need to be the length of a dictionary. It just needs to kind of be very concise and just let residents know here's what's happened and what's gone on in the 12 months prior.
Gail?
I think it sums up nicely, seeing that we really haven't done any projects or allocated any funds. It gives a nice overview of what has transpired so far. So I'm happy with this first pass at it myself.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Gail, are you reflecting on the version that was sent last
Yes.
today?
Not,
Okay.
Not the draft version, but the one that's on the screen.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. All right. And if anybody had by chance seen the first one and then didn't see the second one, the difference you'll see right away is that it has an acknowledgments and a year in review is the latest draft, and the original one didn't have two sections. So that's how you'll know right away if you looking old or new. Okay. Anybody else with comments, questions? Okay. I would like to make a comment. I felt compelled to add acknowledgments to this. As an annual report, this really is part of the record of Shrewsbury, that lives on for year to year to year. And if you go to the library, you'll see annual reports go back for decades. And what I really wanted to make sure was to forever memorialize our beginning of this committee and how we got to CPA, and the road to get here was paved through through volunteers that worked really hard to get CPA adopted in Shrewsbury, and also to acknowledge obviously that the voters, that they overwhelmingly supported CPA at this time. So I wanted to capture that in here. So it's really thanking the voters, thanking the Community Preservation Shrewsbury Ballot Committee, and I felt compelled to call out chairperson of that committee, Missy Hollenbach, for bringing this forward. I do want to say that if the committee would like to move forward with this annual report as is, I would like the opportunity to reach out to Ms. Hollenbach and just confirm that she's okay with me publicly calling out her and being part of this annual report. If she so feels that she does not want to be part of it, I would like to just end then with in the middle section it says here, as such, the committee would like to also thank the ballot question committee, Community Preservation Shrewsbury, and their volunteers, and then end it there for that acknowledgement section.
if Missy is okay with it, I would suggest that the final sentence of the acknowledgements be edited to read "for years, Ms. Hollenbeck," because she is not a Mrs. She's married, but her husband's last name is not Hollenbeck. But she
Thank you,
is Ms.
Deborah.
Hollenbeck.
I was going to suggest the same edit. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sure that he'd mind, but
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Okay.
my only other comment is under the year in review. We're all so closely tied to this that we can easily follow the narrative. But I wonder if it might make sense in the second paragraph to say that the process, to put the year up front, it's a little bit confusing to read that we formed the committee in 2021, and then it backs up to say that it was started with a citizens petition warrant article, excuse me, which was a year earlier. Maybe just to say the process began in 2020 or at the 2020 town meeting, just so that people understand you're going further back in history. I don't know if anybody other than me actually reads the annual report every year, but if they're not familiar, that might make it just a little bit more clear.
Well, I'm hoping historians will look back at the CPC and look back at 2021 and see what was going on and see, you know. Okay, thank you. All right, so I think that's something that Rowan or Bernie, right, just make that edit minor there. All right, so I'll reach out to Missy relative to that part and just take that change as Deborah had pointed. One thing I did want to ask you was at the very bottom, there is the part about the website. And yes, if more information about the Community Preservation Committee and the Community Preservation Act, visit that webpage. So that webpage right now is really just our page, which says here who are the members, and there isn't much to it, right? My intention there was if somebody wanted to look more about what is the Community Preservation Act and all the possibilities of it, that's why I called out the other coalition site. Bernie or Rowan, was there a particular reason not to include that?
Rowan and I had talked about this earlier. My preference is to make it a Shrewsbury webpage and not in our annual report to include an outside website. I wanted to mention this anyways. I don't want to get into it too much, but I did want to mention to the committee is that webpage is just a beginning, right? And by the time we see this annual report published in press and on paper, I would like to have a lot more information and links put up there, including a link to the Community Preservation Coalition, the actual statute itself, a direct line, and anything else. So eventually, we want to buff this out over time.
Okay.
We can move quickly and slowly depending on what it is, but just like the plan is a living document, this is a living website. So if you see something or there's something in particular that we want to put up there, I would suggest in the future as we get applications, we probably want to have here are the project applications that have come in, right? Excuse me. So people can review them from home and so on and so forth. So Jason, I appreciated what you were doing and I agree with it. I just think we can do it right through our website. I don't think we need to send them elsewhere. So then they can come and see everything you're doing and everything that's relevant in one place.
Yep, makes sense now. Thank you for calling that out. All right, last opportunity. Anybody else on this annual report? Kathy, did you have a chance there to skim?
Yes, I had looked at it today. I just didn't know exactly what you were referring to. So thank you.
Okay, no problem. And by the way, have we heard at all from Rajesh? I wasn't expecting he would be out today, so I don't know.
Yes, I was gonna share that later, but he unfortunately had a conflict with work and last minute couldn't make it, so he apologizes. Okay. But Jason, perhaps you and I can connect with him outside of this meeting, and we can fill him in.
Okay, perfect, no problem. So, okay, cool. Thank you very much. All right. No, we're not voting on that, right? So we can move on. Right. All right. So next order of business is reviewing the updated first year timeline. Rowan, if you would please share that PowerPoint. Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do each meeting is to go through the timeline and just say where we've been, where we are now, what's ahead of us, very briefly, so we can always orient ourselves in the process. So we can see that in the first row there, it's all about the community preservation plan, where we've put a lot of effort into it so far. December, we took the action to define the table of contents for the plan, and then to assign one or two people or three people per section, and to go off and to develop the meat of that section in the plan, and to come back to this meeting tonight, which is our January meeting, to review those drafts and to discuss those issues, or discuss what has been drafted. So it's also, we'll get to comment on it tonight, and the edits will be done offline, with the same authors, to go through and just tweak it further if there is any need to that. We'll continue to collect any of those community needs in the spreadsheet. I know that so far I can see no one has submitted anything yet. I know there's a lot of work here, so we'll get into that part as we go into dive into the plan itself. But that is an ongoing activity. And then where are we going from here is that tonight I'd like to plan out that the idea about how we're going to meet up with the boards and committees that 5 of you represent, back to those boards and get the feedback of those committees. So that's what you see there in the bottom for January, saying for February, March, we're introducing the CPC, the Community Preservation Plan, to those boards. So I really want to just define the action item on that one as we go forward. The row underneath it is about the application process. It's chopped off there in the view, but basically we haven't started it, and I think that's an update that we're going to modify here onto the timeline, saying to reflect that we haven't started the plan yet. We really should be getting a working group started next month to begin looking at that application process. But again, there's a lot of work here as it is with the plan. So just want to give you the heads up, saying once we get past the plan, we got to get the application going. And I'm thinking that's probably going to be a smaller set to kick that off, because there's just a lot of activity and a lot of working groups that have to be created to get these pieces going. So we'll move on from there. And then the last row is a budget items. And Rowan and Bernie really will keep us on track on that, as far as what's needed to be submitted into the woodworks for getting ready for fiscal 23. Okay, and that's it from the timeline. Any questions, comments? Okay, all right, not hearing any, no hands. Okay, all right, move on to the next item, which is the heart of our meeting tonight, and that's review and take comments on the draft community preservation plan. And I'd like to just step through section by section, and allow an opportunity for the authors to make any comments about where any challenges they came across, anything new anything that was surprising to them, or any call outs they like to have before, like an overview of what they thought about the process to get to this point, and any general questions. And then we'll open up to any feedback from the rest of the committee. I see number one was the letter. So when Melanie and Deborah, do you anticipate the letter would be ready for drafting, for a review, I should say?
I drafted a letter and sent it to Deb, and Deb edited it, and I never saw it again after that. And I don't know where it went. So I went on to other things while I was waiting to talk to Deborah.
We'll put our heads together and we'll get it back out to all of you. Melanie did a really nice job starting it out, and I just tweaked and played with it a little.
Yeah.
That
Well, I have, you know,
worse
when
than
I first saw it, it was right before Christmas, and I said, "Oh, I'll look at this later," and that was the last I saw it, and then I could never find it again. So that's where we stand on that. I'm sorry to say it wasn't very long, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And I know that there was some interest in getting an overview of that, so that the tone of it was appropriate for the town, and everybody agreed with that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No problem. Just wanted to check on there. So, I think we'll definitely just touch on each of these sections here, but the work is going to be really still continuing offline. So any feedback you have, obviously as the letters is available, Rowan will let us know, and then the committees are available to give that feedback through Owen to the authors of any of these sections.
It was my understanding we were working on the draft of the table of contents, which, of course, what we were looking at was more involved than an average just list of page numbers, but it wasn't the full meat of the plan. But now you're referring to it as the plan. So did I not understand the assignment?
Well, by creating the section, you've filled out a portion of the table of contents to the community preservation plan. So everyone doing their sections has provided now the community preservation plan in its earliest stage. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. It's what I was trying to just be very high level overview as a table of contents, with the intent that there would be more information and more in-depth narrative around each section or subsection of each topic as we went forward. But I was just concerned that I hadn't done it adequately when you began referring to it as a plan, rather than when we were working on it at the end of the year, we were calling it a table of contents.
Right, because what we were teeing up was we have a required need to have a community preservation plan, and each of the 186 other communities have figured out different ways on how they want to define that plan. And so in the last meeting, we landed onto a table of contents for that plan that we wanted to roll forward with. And it's certainly, as a living document, if we think that as we go through this process and it's like, oh, I really think it's important to have X, Y, Z, and it's not covered in this plan, and the committee wants to, agrees to add that section, we can always do that, right? Add or collapse. But I wanted to start with something, right? And as you probably heard from me saying a lot of times in the last couple of meetings, is I really like the Watertown plan, and so you can see where if you see that document, they I kind of consolidated further down from there because I had too many sections, so landing on a happier, like a smaller set, and with each section being assigned out, the intention was that I was hoping that in each of the sections that I had enough like verbiage in there to understand what was the background for that section, but looking at other community preservation plans to get the gist of what goes into that section. So, if we were talking about, say, open space, right, as a section, and if you went to any of the other community preservation plans, you would see there is, small to a large amount, and again, depending on the variation of other plants from other communities, they'll talk about what are the needs, right? So what, to summarize in a narrative, what are the needs of the community? We need to protect open space. We need to add more open space. We want more active and passive recreation. We want to protect our water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the needs section, that was needs. In the goals is really a succinct version of it saying, what do we need? More open space, protect our wetlands and habitats. So you'll start seeing that. And you know what? It's really a lot of it is pretty much boilerplate. When you really boil it down to take out the specifics about individual towns, CPA is pretty much the same across each of the towns. For history, we want to preserve historical artifacts and buildings, and then we're just filling in blanks to say, here are examples about our community. But we'll take it through we'll go through each of the sections, and then we'll hear out where people's mindsets were as they filled out their sections, and if they need to critique further, we'll certainly go there. Is that okay? Are there any other general questions, comments about the process, confusion, anything before we go into number 2, community overview? Okay. All right, community overview, please. Okay, and let's see. All right. Well, fortunately, I don't have that in front of me to say who had that section.
That was, Mr. Chair, that was for Rajesh and myself.
Okay, thank you.
So actually, Rajesh and myself went this at 2 different directions. And after consultation with Rajesh, he suggested we go the more direct approach that I came across. And mostly because I was also assigned one with Gail on community preservation. I'm sorry, it was the
Historic preservation?
Historic preservation. So a lot of the information that Rajesh had come across, I already had privy to, because Gail did an amazing job on that section. When she gets to it, she can she can take the floor on that one. And I thought it would be more repetitive than it would be helpful. So I basically just mentioned in the first paragraph, just a very basic, where Shrewsbury was founded, basic understanding of where we were. Like I said, more in depth of how Shrewsbury got to where it is today is in Gail's area. And then I said, okay, well, then I looked at what you had for how would it be relevant for us. So the 3 spaces that I chose, or that are a part of this, have to do with open space and the fact that there are limited parcel of land available in Shrewsbury. We have to have a focused effort to identify what potential properties that CPA funding can be utilized to acquire, and to try to make them permanent open space to be enjoyed by all. Same thing under the housing element, and I'm sure there's going to be some duplication here with another section, but this is current information that I had was our threshold for affordable housing is far below the state mandate of 10%. So in there, I've got some, I guess, a slant at how 40B is not zone restrictive. So basically, you can put a 40B project anywhere you want. You can have conditions, but you can't prevent. So I kind of mentioned that in that section, and the fact that with 40B housing, you tend to have a higher impact on the school systems. And as a matter of fact, the school systems are pretty much the driver for the housing for 40B. And then in the final section, I had historic preservation, as that was really kind of the catalyst as to how this CPA was kind of brought forward to us, in that the town has gone in gut funding for doing some evaluation of the properties that we have. And I know that there's still some work that's being done on that. So there's not a full report yet that I know of, but that we should definitely have historic preservation as a high priority in terms of what the community overview of where CPA should be. So that's basically it. And it's kind of brief, and it was brief for a reason, because like I said, I know Gail's section is fairly lengthy, and I didn't want this to turn into this really large, you drop everybody off at the first couple of pages. It's kind of like reading a novel. If you don't get it up to the first chapter, you're not likely to get through the story, right? So right. I wanted to try to keep it as brief as possible. I do have Rajesh's information that he sent. And he just said, no, let's just go forward with this one first. And if we choose to want to meld some other of his ideas in there, we can find space for that.
Okay, sure. And I totally agree. This, as someone reading it, I have a letter introducing, broadly about CPA, blah, blah, right? And like all the pleasantries about CPA. But here is the summary, right? And this is right. It's just very short, very light, because they will be covered in depth in the individual sections, as you described. So yes, that was the intent of this section in my view.
Okay.
Again, I gotta stress that it's not my plan; it's our plan, and there's 186 other versions out there. So there's not one right answer. There is just one that we want to be moving forward with, and
Believe me,
and
I have no desire for poetic license on anything drafted. I am wide open for any suggestions.
all right. Well, thank you for that. Let's see here. Did someone just raise their hand? Oh yeah, Melanie.
I just want to comment about that. The catalyst that brought CPA to the forefront was historic preservation. I think it depends on who you are. Now, for me, open space was the big deal. Open space and outdoor recreation. And while I love historic preservation, and I would have voted for it if, open space wasn't on there, I think it's very individual as to what you thought was the most important thing.
Point well taken. If you are more than welcome to modify that to describe it however which way you wish.
I don't know how to
you're right.
that.
It's my
I'm just saying.
It's my bias when I was writing it. So
yeah.
Deborah.
I will suggest if you're going to, in this section, say that we adopted the Community Preservation Act with the purpose to secure resources, then we should list all 4 of the areas in which we will ultimately be accepting applications. So probably just add a bullet, a little nugget about recreation as well, because it would seem odd if we talk about it later and it's not mentioned in this overview.
Kathy?
2 comments. It's funny because I looked at it differently, Steve, than you did when it came to the overview part. I loved Gail's overview and made a note that should be moved to this section. So again, just my opinion. Your point's a good one about if that's too lengthy, we might move people. But I thought it sort of encompassed so much about what community preservation does. So again, that, like you said, that's up for debate and discussion. The other point was specific to the housing, and my concern here, although the 40B requirement is an overwhelming reason to have more affordable housing, I would like to think we want to have affordable housing to have affordable housing for our citizens. So I'd like to make it more positive and make that we want to be able to have housing, affordable housing where members of our community can raise their families here or whatever, and then make the 40B section either a smaller part of this or handle the specifics of 40B within the housing section. Again, just a couple of things that jumped out at me.
Okay, and anybody else? Okay, I mean, yeah, certainly. I think there's the narrative of Shrewsbury as a town. I think that it's probably, I'm going to guess that Melanie and Deborah, you have that partly in the letter. It's going to be coming up here as a summary, and it's also going to be brought up in history as well. So I think it's okay to have that. It'll just be progressive. Martha?
Thanks, Jason. I guess I have a comment on the open space as well. We still have a fair amount of land that remains open, but it needs to be protected. And I'd like to see a sentence in there about increasing access to the existing open space that we do have, because some of it is just very difficult to get into because it's surrounded by private property. So that's a problem that the town needs to solve. And I'm not quite sure how CPA is going to do it, but I'd like to see it mentioned here.
Okay, anybody else? All right, and certainly not the last time we're going to be reviewing this, right? I think Steve you'll take these points back with Josh and modify between you guys, and just make it available back through Rowan, so that we can comment further on that, please. Okay, moving on to number 3, please. Okay, so what is the Community Preservation Act?
Martha and myself.
Okay, thank you.
And we're not the act. We did this section.
All right. Any challenges or surprising things you learned?
Well, no, but I did make a couple of modifications since this publication. One of them is in the where it says after the big blue link, it says the CPC does not initiate, implement, or manage. There's been some discussion with Stuart that indicated that the CPC can initiate projects. So I added generally does not initiate, just to make it a little bit more open in case that was, but that's kind of semantic. So maybe we need to check that out to verify. It was my understanding that perhaps if there was a project that didn't come, a section of the CPA that didn't come with any projects for a long time, that the CPC could initiate something, because like a housing project, it could sit there and nothing comes forward, or a historical project doesn't come forward. Then and if I'm wrong, somebody, please step in. But that was kind of what I understood. So that might be something we need to kind of give us the option of being able to do that if in fact we can. So I didn't want to just play does not, because that pretty much says we can't. So I added generally. I tried to do more about content rather than format. So we can reformat it to make it a little bit to read easier, because there's a lot of narrative in all this. And on the next on the funding allocation section,
I think it's about number 4, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. We're
Right.
still on 3. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
No, as far as that goes, I mean, I'm open to, anything that I've missed. We may have missed something, but this was pretty straightforward from the other towns' plans.
Just a comment on the process. Gail really took the lead on this. And I think she did a great job. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Do we want to include the link to the abatement application? Is that something you think is necessary in the where it's red? So do we want to include the link to the abatement? And I couldn't find the bylaw link to put that in there, so we'd have to add that if we want to refer to the bylaw.
Yeah, actually, Bernie, I don't believe that the abatement is available on the assessor's website. I was going through that today, and I could not find it. Doesn't seem to be something that stands out as a way to help residents that are eligible and not able to afford a CPA surcharge to be able to apply for that as a personal exemption.
Yeah, I can make a note of that and speak to the assessors. Roan, I'm sure she's making a note of it as we speak. So we'll figure that out and get an answer for you.
Yeah, and and on that topic, I would just offer that the feedback back to the assessor is that it appears a lot of the language is around if you want to have your home reassessed, right? If you think it's in error, the assessed value, but there's no really like call out to say there are personal exemptions beyond, like, I mean, CPA is one of those separate one of the personal exemptions if you're a senior and you have a low income thresholds that you are eligible for. That is one of the personal exemptions from the property tax, as opposed to the other ones as well, right? Like if I think it was a military, Gold Star veterans and other special categories, but we really should be in that list of broader exemptions, and I couldn't find that generally. So, all right. So the question here is, should that be linked here in this document? I think Kathy.
I think yes. Why not make it easy for people? Oh,
All right. So once we hear where it's at, then it can be added to this section. Okay. Anybody else? All right. And certainly, Rowan, if you want me to slow down, I'll slow down if you're making any of the edits.
No, if anyone feels that I'm not representing their comment accurately, though, please interrupt me and we can address that. But I'll just jot down the notes as I hear them.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to section 4, please.
Okay. Section 4 was how CPA funds may be used. Again, this is pretty straightforward information, but I did add on 4.1 funding allocation. Again, in red, whether we wanted to add that pie chart, which is a nice visual. You know, I think once we get into the design of the pages, that we'll probably want to add some of that kind of stuff, because some people are visual learners and some aren't. So to have it in both in written form and in visual form might be helpful. And under where it says the CPC will annually present a budget and project proposal funding for approval of town meeting, I found a nice paragraph in Concord's plan that I added into this. I don't know if you want me to read it or not. I can give it to Rowan and she can put it into the next batch. But it covers how town meeting is involved in the process. And I think that's important. I'll read it real quick. It says town meeting may approve, reduce, or reject any amount of spending appropriation recommended by the CPC. At the CPC's recommendation, town meeting may also decide to set aside all or part of the annual fund revenues for later spending by allocating revenues to a reserve for one or more community preservation purpose categories. Town meeting may not, however, increase any recommended appropriation or reservation. In addition, town meeting may not appropriate or reserve any fund monies on its own initiative without a prior recommendation by the CPC. I felt it was important that it was stated someplace town meeting's role in this whole process, you know, a little bit more in the funding aspect of it, because ultimately town meeting does have the final say. So I'll send that to Rowan and she can put it in, and you can, like we said, this isn't the final draft, so.
So that the passages that you just read,
Yeah.
remind me of, I believe that came out of the Department of Revenue, like the periodic guidance that says this is how Chapter 44B, the CPA Act, should be interpreted, and that sounds like it's quoted straight from.
Okay. Yeah, this
that.
was out of Concord's funding page. Concord has a very nice plan. I suggest that people take a look at it, because it may give you a little bit more. When I was doing the historical part, it was like, okay, I'm getting crazy with this. I got to kind of figure out how to put all this information down. So I figured, well, who has got a lot of historical, resources, and who's been doing this for a long time? They've been doing it since early, 2000s. So I went to Concord's page, and it was very helpful. So just as a side note, but anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm personally on board with you adding that section about the role of town meeting.
Okay.
For our town meeting members who you want to know, hey, how am I a part of this process? And they could see that, so they can be well informed about that. But again, it sounds like it is part of a section from that larger document.
So then determining project eligibility. I don't know.
4.2. Okay.
4.2. Open for suggestions.
Kathy?
Two suggestions on the chart. I believe on under housing and rehabilitation and or restore, that should say if acquired or created with CPA funds, not unless. And I referred back to one of the documents that we used as the ballot committee, and we had if in there. And then under support for housing, we also had a paragraph in that provided the housing asset itself is made affordable by the expenditure. So I think we need to add both of those in and clarify whether it's unless or if. But we
Okay.
said if throughout everything else.
Okay.
Maybe we'll have to check on the coalition site. I don't remember where I pulled that chart from, whether it was from.
I pulled out the one, I pulled the slides that we used in our town meeting presentation,
Okay.
and that's how we had it written then. So hopefully we weren't wrong.
Yeah.
No, not wrong. You're just saying we're more right now.
We're more right now. So.
And then, in the
Oh
very
yeah, I see what you're
last,
saying.
the very last section, there
Yeah.
was this, who may apply for CPA funds. I just want to make sure that my suggestions are correct, and if there's any more to add into that or not. Edit
Yeah,
or add.
was that called out in any of these other town plans that you've seen? Did they list out organizations like this?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. I don't think I would have come up with those all independently on my own. So I'm assuming that I pulled them from Summit Plan.
Okay.
We looked, but I can review that just to make sure. Maybe
I think, I'm sorry, Gail, I think that was on the coalition website.
I think so. I mean, I went to so many different sources that I should have.
Because we had a little bit of discussion around this, I remember, and I was specifically wondering about housing and neighborhood developers.
Yeah,
I do remember seeing that in print in another.
Yeah, that's why I put a
resource.
I don't know if that applies. If we need to. Well, I suppose neighborhood developers. I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
So well, I think this could be like these are for instance, right? Here are examples, or for instance, these are
Like,
organizations.
Okay.
Yeah. So rather than saying these are explicitly the groups,
Right. Right.
but the reason why I'm kind of leery about it is because it's easy. There's certain entity types that are best to work with us, right? Like for instance, you wouldn't. It'd be better if CPC does not give money to just a non-organized neighborhood association.
Okay.
Right. So 3 households say, "Hey, we want a dog park in our community." They don't have the means to organize it, to fund it, track the money, ensuring that it's completed. Right. Versus a nonprofit that is more likely to be able to have accountability to make it happen, and to show receipts, and to be that organizational piece of it. So I feel like in this section we do need to call out. We would certainly prefer that interested parties work through either the representative department in Shrewsbury government, or approaching the CPC to get started, to find an adequate track that would allow a successful application. Probably a little better wordsmithing on that, but ultimately that there's a way to do this, because someone coming in with an idea, hey, I think we really need to buy all the remaining land in Shrewsbury and protect it, right? And then they walk away, right? There's no means to do that, right? so that's something that certainly we want to have an organization that we can work with to make that happen. So I think that part needs to be added.
Got it.
Anybody else agree, disagree?
I agree.
All right. Is there any more to the section?
No, that was the end of the section. Do you
Okay.
find that the links are helpful, or, links to the different, like this link to the communitypreservation.org, the files for the Department of Revenue, and is that necessary, or is it overkill? Are people really going to go and look at that?
I think it really is. It is worth it to have there, unless there's a reason not to have external connections. Bernie, any issue? You shaking your head no. Okay. All right. So yeah, I think that's totally fine. We certainly want to leverage them because they are they are tasked with helping communities with adoption and implementation of CPA. So I think it is okay to use that. Kathy?
I'm just looking at Rowan's notes and rehabilitate. I can't even talk anymore. This is what happens to me when it gets close to 8 o'clock. Rehabilitate and/or restore, that should be if as well, according to the chart I use. So both of those I think should be if.
And I will say that whether it should be if and I think we should just go back to the coalition's website to see what they're using now, and make sure that the statement is accurate.
The rationale is, like, we can't use this money to go do any work at the towers, but if we were to build a new housing for affordable housing, then we can use the money. So that's why I think it's if, not unless.
And Kathy, do you feel that I should amend my comment in any way?
No, it's just the chart.
Okay. Gail, good?
And obviously we need to confirm it, but just from everything I've read, we can't do, we can't restore something that we haven't acquired, or without CPA money, I believe.
Gail, you go back on that to take a look? Thank you.
Yeah, I can go back. I can check this chart.
Okay.
The coalition chart?
Yes, and really
Right.
looking at the language around the expanded language around rehabilitate and restore, as Kathy was
Okay.
talking about. Martha?
So I did check the chart and it does say unless, but that doesn't mean that Kathy's interpretation isn't correct. I think it would behoove us to be as clear as possible, because these are, kind of a tricky situation sometimes to understand how this money can be used. But that is the chart. The CPA Coalition website does have unless in both of those categories.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it sounds more like it's around the wordsmithing of it, whether it's if acquired as more stands out a little bit more than unless. Okay. I see what it is. It's the reversal. Previously, we had it was a yes, and if acquired with CPA funds. I'm looking as Kathy's referring to a document we used in the campaign, and so at that time it was a yes across the board at the bottom, and it was in the affirmative saying if acquired, and now the coalitions updated their chart to say automatically no, and then the reverse is on the bottom saying, well, yes, it would be unless you acquired it by CPA. So I think it's really semantics, but what we want to show more positively. And I think the more positive piece is as Kathy was suggesting. Okay. As long as we don't deviate from the full definition of what is allowable or not. And I think Gail, if you go back to the linked version,
So you're suggesting that we change the no's to yeses? And
As
put-
long as
F-
as long as we're not redefine, like we can't redefine what is allowable,
Right,
right?
okay.
So as the chart of this, it was a simplified chart for readability, right?
Right.
And so I will leave it in you and Martha's
Okay.
purview to see what is a better approach to that. But your guiding principle, which we cannot deviate from, is what is actually defined as allowable or not, and that is available for that DOR link, because that's the expanded legalese version. What's there? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Number 5. Okay. This was Melanie and myself. Melanie, any comments about or any challenges in making this? You drafted this for us, and I kind of came in afterwards.
It's pretty straightforward. This is just what the bylaw says. I don't know what else I can say about it.
All right. Well, does anybody have any questions or comments about Section 5? So basically, a lot of it is copied out of the bylaw itself.
One little thing here, where it says submit appropriate documentation to the State Department of Revenue as required. I copied that from something else, and they cited some particular form that had to be filled out that I did not recognize, and so I finessed it this way. Bernie, is that okay? It's under 513, keep records, the last line.
So
Do they have to do that?
they're annually, and this is, I only know this from Stuart a while ago, which is as we get projects approved, then we're reporting back to Department of Revenue saying these are the projects that are approved. This is the amount of allocation. So it really is feeding back into their central database to know
Okay.
that CPA monies are being leveraged. The timing of that, I'm not familiar with. I think this is definitely a Stewart question. So we'll just take this. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's any first year reporting. So I think that's a great catch, Melanie, for bringing that up. Bernie or Rowan, would you mind reaching back out to Stewart, say, do we have any obligation, and when is the timing for the Department of Revenue entries?
Certainly get that for internal processes. I'm not sure we want to put that exactly. I think the way it's written now is a good way to write it, because just sometimes putting the word is like as required is pretty good, especially if the state shifts their deadlines or application requirements. We don't want to be over specific. That said, we should definitely reach out to Stuart and try to get some timelines. So I just jotted a note down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And anything else about Section 5? Anybody?
Is that last section still clear about strategic? Using leverage, working with other groups, combining two areas. I tried to think about any possibilities.
This one was copied from Watertown, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Unless I got it from somewhere else. I don't remember at this point, but I didn't come up with this out of my own head.
Okay.
So.
Right. All right. So this one definitely is across the board that we want to make sure that we're satisfied with. So we'll just take a moment here to just read that last 522.
that business about a long-term maintenance plan, is that realistic?
Martha's got a question about that or something else.
Well, it's sort of something else. I think it's perfectly reasonable to include a long-term maintenance plan. But my question is about process timing. As I'm reading this, I'm wondering, are projects to be submitted and approved only on an annual basis, or will there be a rolling application process with the understanding that it has to be voted on at town meeting?
Can I answer that? Stuart said, whatever you do, don't use rolling applications. He said you get into terrible trouble. People come in at the last minute with incomplete information and cause a lot of delay and difficulty, and it's to be avoided at all costs. So once a year we should have an application deadline, and with the allowance that if there's an emergency, you might be able to do something at the other town meeting, you know, in the other part of the year. But that's what I got from Stuart.
So to follow up on that, then can you say a little bit more about the time-sensitive projects will be given special consideration?
Well, that would have to, be allowed under, as a case-by-case basis, if they could be fit in, with another town meeting. Jason, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I think maybe Deborah's going to bring this up about the application process is another section that may help define that. Deborah?
We're still a long ways from having the actual application process fully defined. It was my understanding from what Stuart had said that we should have a deadline as well as an allowance for things that, an extraordinary opportunity that comes up or an emergency, that we would consider such things. And we'll have to think about the wording of that as we can. But in general, there's an annual submission deadline. I had actually raised my hand with 2 comments on the rest of it. One, probably just picky, but in-kind contributions are donations of time, materials, or expertise. So in that same section, just to simplify the sentence, you could say in-kind contributions of time, materials, or expertise. In-kind is anything that's not cash. And if the question that was brought up about budgets and timelines, including a long-term maintenance plan, if you wanted that statement to fit for all of the categories, we could ask the budgets and timelines to be reasonable and realistic and include a plan for sustainability. Because if you built something, maintenance is part of sustaining it. Just to make it more clear, and same with it, if we had a recreation space, we'd need to know how would it be sustained and maintained. But I don't know that everything not everything needs maintenance.
Okay, so I think we were commenting on 5, I think above.
It was all in 522.
Oh, the maintenance plan? Not seeing the maintenance plan there.
It's about in the middle. Oh,
It's 4 lines up from the bottom.
Ah, there you go. Okay.
Would you mind repeating just briefly your comment? I'm sorry, I was trying to deal with the closed document.
Sorry. The first comment was about the second sentence of section 522, that the value of projects can be increased by use of additional public or private funds, in-kind contributions, just delete donations, in-kind contributions of time, materials, or expertise. And then three sentences later, where it spoke about long-term maintenance plan, perhaps we said plan for sustainability or maintenance. Maintenance doesn't pertain to all of it. That might be splitting hairs. But we do want projects that are sustainable, so that word should be there somewhere.
Sustainable as in it can be maintained, not sustainability. Right, as the other more recent definition, right?
In human services, they ask how will you sustain this project if you get a giant grant to start a program, how will you sustain it? If you build an athletic field, how will you maintain or sustain it? And the same with housing. Either word could be used.
Sustainable as opposed to maintenance. Okay. All right. Okay. Rowan, I think I wouldn't add the projects, just because then it makes it sound like it's sustainable projects, right?
Good. I understand.
Environmentally sustainable, yeah. Okay. Okay, and then in 521, again, this is pretty core to all areas. Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. All right, we'll move on to number 6. Okay, this is the planning process. And let's see, is this Deborah, you and Melanie?
Let's see, who wrote that?
Oh no, that was you and me.
Yes, you and I. Yes, that's right.
Sorry. Yes.
Jason, I believe your comments are in red, and I did keep in for the sake of conversation. If you do want to address any of the comments you made, or the red line.
Okay, sure, thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments to the points that are not crossed out and just as currently shown with edits?
Where's the end of that line that says multiple?
And that one.
Yeah,
Multiple will achieve this required through multiple
Channels.
Oh yes, there is. It's right underneath the multiple.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that first sentence is straight out of I think it was the bylaw or the required, defining what the CPC is. And then we want to really call out here the existing plan documents that were available to us to get us started with the needs of the community. And again, it's as an ingredient into the needs sections. We already hear about these particular documents. One that we haven't discussed to date was the local historic building inventory, which is probably a better title for that, Gail.
Yeah. What is it named on the website? Isn't it historic building inventory? I think that's what it's called, isn't it?
Okay.
No, that's fine.
All right. You know what? I asked you afterwards. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
At the time I didn't. Yeah. So I think just a note there. Just revise name.
Okay.
Jason, to revise name, please. Okay, and just as a reminder, we will be having a public hearing as required, and that's what 6.2 is about. And then 6.3 is town departments committees. Again, we're required to go back to your respective boards and committees at a minimum, and so we can strive to see more groups. I mean, the more of the community we want to hear out directly, reach out to, that's fine. It's just we have to also be cognizant of what we must do and what we have time to do to weigh in on this first batch. I mean, of course, you know, we're learning through this process as we go, and I just want to make sure that we at least hit what we have to do. So that's that part. 6.3. Okay.
Okay, we're good.
All right, moving on to number 7, please.
Okay, so this I got primarily from the Watertown plan, and it does also reference that the CPC does not initiate. We can probably change the wording on that to to mention that, you know, CPC is allowed to initiate, but I'll work on that a little bit.
This is open space, right?
No, this one is for CPA application process.
Oh, sorry. Applications. Okay.
Okay. In addition to this file, I sent, and I didn't see it in the folder, Rowan. It references a manual, an application manual, and that's basically the Watertown manual. We would have to get in there and modify it to reflect just Shrewsbury needs, and probably a couple of small minor things. I didn't have time to get into it too deeply, but this one has basically, and we'd probably want to hyperlink that in here, so that the application manual is available for those that are interested in going through the process. I also put in here a Shrewsbury website that is just the standard town page. We may want to modify that to reflect if we want to have a direct line to a particular folder or something to that effect. This timeline is the timeline that Watertown uses. It seems to fall in place with things that we've seen and heard in the training that we went through. So I didn't think that it was necessary to modify it in any way, shape, or form. But if we choose to want to change the timing of it, these are basically the steps that Watertown uses, and it seems like it falls through fairly easily. So open for suggestions on that.
Martha?
Just a real quick edit. In that timeline, it's not showing up now because Rowan's working on something further up. But in December, I think March, April, DPA deliberates and votes. That should be CPC.
Oh, CPC, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I see the town council piece there. Just make that as a submitted recommendations submitted for BOS. Actually, BOS approval. Oh yeah, to be placed on the warrant. Yes.
Right. So I think, and the reason why I think Watertown puts town council is just to ensure before it gets in front of the Board of Selectmen, they've had an opportunity, legal has had an opportunity to review for completeness and maybe bouncing it off, maybe a law or two that we may not be aware of before we go to.
Right. Oh, that's good. Yeah, exactly. To make sure that it does fit along with the law of what is allowable for CPA funds. Cool. Thank you. Present projects for town meeting. Vote acceptance. Review. Okay, and I feel like this section is going to be updated as we start working on the application itself, right? It'll just kind of bounce back and forth on that. Cool. Thank you, Deborah.
I just wanted it to be noted that Steve did all of the heavy lifting, all of the work on this section because I was completely asleep at the wheel. So thank you, Steve, for carrying it.
Not a problem.
Well, you were on the behind the wheel for a very long ride, so I hope you weren't asleep behind the wheel.
My 3-year-old car has 53,000 miles on it. You want a road trip on your girl.
All right, Melanie. You still mute, Melanie.
Unmute, Melanie.
I said this, the idea of an application workshop at the end of the summer. I don't recall hearing about that before. It sounds like a good idea, but I just wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, we definitely will want to when we get to the application side of it. I think we'll dive further into that. I see what's coming from Watertown, for sure. And I think we'll just reflect what we're going to do after we get a little further into the application side.
All right.
All right, and is there anything else on the section below that, or no? Or are we at the end?
That was all that was on number 7.
Okay. Application process. Oh, right, in the planning. Okay, got it. They did talk about off-cycle time-sensitive applications. I think we're good for now. And so when we get to the application side, I think that'll flush out more if we want anything else in here. Okay, moving on to number 8, please. All right, open space.
This one at least is clearly defined as to who was working on it. Our process was that I went through the master plan and the open space and recreation plan and just mined them. So there are sections that are taken pretty much verbatim from each of those. Once that was done, I handed it off to Melanie. And Melanie, do you want to speak further about the rest of that process?
I wrote some text, and I think I sent it to you. I don't think I sent it to Rowan because it was still in pretty raw shape. So I think just basically this whole first section of this is pretty undone and just needs a lot more work. So that's basically all I have to say about that right now. I had a lot of trouble with the first 2 sections. And then I think I went on and I think I sent Rowan what was it? It might have been 3 and 4. I think I sent 8.3 and 8.4. Was that right, Rowan?
Yep, they are attached at the end of this document.
Okay, so
Sure.
If we could not really pay too much attention to this first 2 sections right now, because I don't feel like I can defend it in any way. But it just needs more work. We might be able to talk about 3 and 4, I think. So
there are 2 places that 3 is listed. There's this place, and then there's an 8.4, and then there's another 8.3 section afterwards that gets into more detail with the goals.
okay.
I thought. Keep on going down. We have another 2 pages. See, there they are.
All right. Okay, 8.3, 8.4. Where would you like me to leave to start us?
Okay.
I like the more specific goals, but Kathy also has her hand raised.
Bernie? You're mute, Bernie.
Rookie mistake. It's only been 2 years, guys. Come on. My kids are embarrassed at me. So these next 4 sections are quite long, is what I was trying to say, which is all credit to the people who've written them. I just wanted to make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, that perhaps the best way to do it would be for the authors to just provide a brief overview of each section, kind of bring people's attention to certain sections, but then leave it there for right now. And what I think Rowan and I would like to ask everyone to do then, after that, those presentations have been made, is to, if you're good at track changes, use word track changes, or send your comments, print them out, write them however you want. If you're a person who wasn't an author on these sections, put your suggestions in now as they're continuing to be refined, or recommendations, or just say, you know, whatever it is. If it's in a need you want to say, you want to see, or a goal, write a little note, send it off to Rowan or myself, and we can send it on to the authors, or we can discuss it before then. But I think it's important that, I mean, those comments can be addressed together at the next meeting, but I think it gives the authors a chance to address them, and we can put down something like, you know, Steve said he wants to see a need based on, I don't know, open space in the eastern part of town, for example. We can put that in the comments for next meeting. Steve said open space, eastern part of town. And then the authors can say, well, we took Steve's comment and this is how we addressed it, right? So it's not a conversation per se offline. It just gives the authors a chance to take that comment. And otherwise, my concern, being sensitive to everyone's time and knowing that everyone's a volunteer here this evening, is we could be here all night if we start to get into the nitty gritty of each section. And I don't want that to be the case, and I don't think it'll be productive. So just to reiterate, I think each author or the authors should just give a broad overview, focus on a couple parts you would like people to look at. And then if you have something you want to specifically solicit comments on, say, I'd really like some help on this section or that section. And I think that would be really useful. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Rainey. And certainly, the way I see these sections is, I would like to make my own comments that are more broad, broad based. I'm not going to look at individual lines, but just basically direction about what was the intent of the section. In my, that's what I would be looking for personally. Kathy's got a hand raised.
Just a general observation as we get to this section. Several of us, I know I saw it under open space and it's under the affordable housing. Under existing condition and resources, we both talked about demographics, and we don't need to do that in each section. I'm wondering if that should, perhaps demographics of the town, if that should be moved to the overview.
I like that suggestion a lot, Kathy. I think I think I feel very, very strongly that we need to consider demographics and environmental justice communities in this plan. And I think putting it in an overview up front also addresses that perceived importance.
I agree.
So that would be in, can we just add that to, what was it, 3 or 4? I should have printed out the table of contents. So I have.
I think overview was
out.
2, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think 2, community overview.
Overview.
Okay. All right, Steve, are you okay to take that on? Or at least draft it for further review?
Yeah, I can take a look at it.
And Steve, it's in a couple of sections too, so you don't have to recreate the wheel, and I have access to that data if you need it.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so Kathy to assist if need be. Okay, thank you.
So
All right.
I can take a crack at a quick overview of this. I'll try and do it from memory since Rowan's got the wheel. One of the comments is that this section needs to be a lot shorter, and we have not done the work yet to make that so. But existing conditions and resources, there's a description of the basic geography of Shrewsbury that helps understand how the town physically is put together. There's a sense that the town has already been prioritizing aquifer protection, and that there are existing parcels of farmland, for example, and large privately held open spaces that have no real protection yet, that need to be prioritized, and that we really haven't done the prioritization of open space and where we want to work. So that has to be something that comes very early on in this process. The lake is mentioned several times, and the lack of public access to Lake Quinsigamond. Melanie, what am I missing? A sense of connectivity between open spaces, I think, is another big theme.
Yeah, the connectivity and possibly even looking at chapter lands and farmland as worthy of protection. And you just mentioned that they have limited protection. Just as a side issue, some of the stuff that I copied directly from the bylaw and so on refers to ocean and beach and so on. I put that in just because it was in the bylaw. It obviously doesn't apply to Shrewsbury. Like, for instance, we have no dunes that I'm aware of. But
we have ancient dunes. They're being mined for sand. But I think we can put in wording that says the pertinent features that are protected.
Okay, so
as they pertain to Shrewsbury are, and we don't have to bring in coasts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely keep it local. Local.
All right. That's good to know.
All right. So, I think, to interject here then. So the first section is about, let me get my screen. Okay. The first section here, point 1, which is the same for the next 4. Existing conditions and resources. The intent for that section is a narrative to say, what do we have? And I'm sure that's probably something already documented in the open space and recreation plan to say, here's a narrative. We have X number of acres of open space. Here's the number of acres that are semi-protected. Some of these are private land, but more factual basis. What do we have? We have a coast we have shared lake with Worcester, right? We have a number of ponds. We have blah, 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 right? Continue that process. So what do we have? Then the needs section, that's where you dive into, and it could be a tangent to what have you already provided in the resources. So you can say, we have a lake, right? In the needs section. I'm sorry, in the existing resources section. But in the needs section, if there was a notification to say we need to protect our coast, on the lake, or protect our other water bodies because of XYZ that's happening, that's where you put in the needs section that has been known so far. So definitely they should be segregated between the two. There's a logical link between the two. If you're talking about needing to improve the things we already have, or if you need to say we need to have more of this, then that's why you say the needs. We need to have more of XYZ. Your goals are going to be then a very succinct, not project specific statement that says we need to do the following. We need to have more open space. We need to protect our wetlands, etc. And then the CPA eligibility for open space, or X, right? Whatever it is, in historical, affordable, etc. That is really just what's coming off the coalition's website, the legalese about what is allowable. So that there's really not much to deviate from there because about legally what is allowed. I hope that helps as we step through the narrative about each of 8, 9, 10, and 11. We got hands up, Kathy.
Could you, I'm sorry, I missed the part you said about the needs. What was your one sentence on needs?
Needs are what's been documented or we start to hear from the community that needs to happen for your section. So, well, let's say the resources you would have said, Shrewsbury has, I'm making this up, 1,000 affordable housing units.
Yeah.
Our needs are, we need to reach per 40B statute, we need to be 10%, which is X number. We still have a way to go. We've documented a need to, have other types of affordable housing for certain populations, etc. Your goals would be, we need to enhance our affordable housing units or more affordable housing units very broadly. And then the last one was what is allowable, and that you could just copy straight from, or as best as applicable from the coalition site. It needs to be, if it's a new building, it's got to be, owned and, paid for by CPA monies and blah, blah, blah. Right. However, especially if we're talking about open space, so we're talking about a conservation restriction will have to be applied. If we're talking about historical preservation, the allowable use would be, it has to be listed on the local historical commission's local inventory of historic and places and buildings and artifacts. So there's conditions that are predefined already for us in that last one. So again, resources, just a summary of what we have. Doesn't have to be contextual of saying we need to do more, right? Just saying, what do we have? All right. I thought I heard a couple of things about hands up. Anybody else? Broadly? Melanie?
As regards goals, can we say, or is this too specific? We would like to see an available parcel of open space within 1 walking mile of every resident in Shrewsbury. Would that be the numbers, just flexible there, but is that the kind of a goal that is too specific, or is that, I mean, I'm going for the idea that every neighborhood should have some access to open space. So if you can walk with, a mile from your house to get to open space, that doesn't sound to be too bad. I'm just throwing this out. Is this a reasonable goal or not?
I'll give my personal opinion. I think that it's a little narrow. And whatever goal we have here, it has to be, I believe, again, my opinion, it should be backed up by the needs. Okay. So if it's documented, making it up, master plan says you should have closer open space closer to where you live. If the community members come to the public hearing and they say the same, or going to the Conservation Commission and you're hearing a lot of the same, right? Or Parks and Cemetery Commission saying, hey, people are asking for, I need to be closer to recreation or open space or passive recreation, I should say. Then yeah, there's a basis to say, yeah, no, this really should be our goal, because these are the needs, these are the needs that have been documented and everything lines up to support this. So goals really should be backed up. And if it's kind of like not that narrow in the needs, then we shouldn't get too narrow in the goals.
Okay, it sounds like we need to wait on that a little bit then. Just see what develops.
I have a quick question. What section does trails fall under? Is it open space or is it recreation?
I didn't hear what you said, Martha.
Under which section are we should we put the discussion of trails? Does it fall under open space or does it fall under recreation?
Well, I consider it open space, but maybe, it's
Yeah.
passive recreation. It's not like game fields, So we're probably going to have a fight about this.
Well,
It can
before
go
we get
either way.
yeah, before we get to Deborah for a second there, but I do want to comment. This is exactly why CPA monies, like when we actually get to the budgeting part of it, open space and recreation are combined, because it's really splitting hairs between the use of the land, right? So basically, I think we should just have the recreation side should cover active recreation and passive recreation. And open space should be more about the wetland protection, habitat protection, air quality, all the environmental, no people, no humans.
All right, I will keep that in mind. Thank you.
If you all agree, it's just all right, Deborah.
I think that does make sense to define what we mean by recreation and open space, because I did try to talk a little bit. I was looking for more information. I know when personally I think of recreation, my family does a lot of hiking. And so I was thinking about trails when I was trying to find information about recreation for that. So I think whatever we decide as a group, as long maybe that's something to add to the overview in each of those sections to very clearly define by open space for the purposes of this plan. Open space is, for the purposes of this plan, recreation includes. Because I do think recreation is a whole lot more than just a playing field.
Right. And we do have that the types, right? The active recreation and passive recreation. It would be interesting to see what Jim thinks, Deborah, if we get a chance to ask him about that, because that might already be predefined from Parks and Department.
Yeah, but you see what parks say, because a number of projects in other communities, like if you look at rail trails, they're for walking, they're for biking, some of them are for horseback riding. So they are combined. And how would you look at like the rail trail in West Boylston and define as that open space or recreation? If walking is passive, but does that count? I think it's recreation.
Yeah, and I think again, my opinion, I'd love to hear it. I really believe the recreation side should cover both active and passive, leave open space to non-human activities. Unless it's water protection, right? Obviously, we care about that too. Anybody else have a different opinion on that? Okay. All right. Any Martha or Melanie, do you have any other questions for the group about trying to help you keep going on this section?
No.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the next one, please. All right, recreation.
This is definitely a work in progress. I know Jim has been busy. We literally did two separate things and then melded it together and gave it to Rowan. What I'd like to do in it is, we did define recreational open space and recreation. That came out of the open space and recreation plan. There was a lot of information in there. It was challenging to separate from that plan what was recreation and what was open space in some instances. I would like to, if on one hand this feels long, but I think there should be I have seen tables that specifically list each recreation space in town, and I think that should be included somewhere in the plan. We were able to cite some of the data from the open space and recreation plan surveys about that was what we put for needs. Jim also identified some needs on the second page from the master plan, but those are very specific. And I have to admit, when we put them in, I'm not sure if some have already been completed or not. So perhaps that on the next page that you'll see, that perhaps those bulleted specific needs should be deleted from this narrative and added later. And the same with community suggestions. I liked the statement you had under open space that that ideas would be solicited in the public comment process. I think that should be added to our statement on this as well. But we try to just say what we have and what people think we want, and to look at recreation as more than just our youth sports. But a lot of people don't know what we have in town. The number of my neighbors who've never heard of the Carlstrom Forest, they've never walked through there, is surprising. A lot of people don't know that we have a cricket pitch. It battles with mini soccer sometimes, but that we have as much as we do for people to use or how to use them in town, but also what else we need. A lot of folks don't know all the money that Shrewsbury Youth Soccer has put in over the years to the Glavin fields and what goes into that, and just how much. Shrewsbury Youth Soccer is one of the largest youth soccer programs in the state. I would imagine our lacrosse programs are growing. Football needs fields. There's more that could be said in there, but hopefully what we started. I saw that the open space plan mentioned ski board. I mean, it's privately held, but it is recreation. If you ask certain members of my family, skiing is the only recreation, but yep. Welcome your thoughts, edits, deletions, additions, anything.
With it, certainly, as you were going through the verbal narrative, do you feel like that's represented here as well? We were talking about, we have the need for lacrosse has some needs. Soccer has already had a lot of investment, so it's more like resources.
And those, for the most part, our youth sport leagues are all private nonprofit entities that, I can speak closely for soccer, with the exception of the town mowing, Foundation Fields and Floral Street. There are no town resources used to maintain, or even frankly to create the Glavin field, the Glavin properties. Most of our youth sports, part of their opportunity, and Jim can speak to this more, to use town fields, is they're responsible for them. They pay the bills, they line them, they buy the equipment. But there are needs that the town can provide. For example, when they built the cricket pitch, that was a need that groups interested in playing cricket had asked for. I'm not sure that the list of sports leagues is complete. And I'd like to look and see if there are more.
Yeah, so I think so all the color you've just added in conversing here, I think if it's not already reflected in the resources of the town, I think it should be there. It sounds like it should be there, in my opinion. To say that we have we have recreational resources, but we rely on external entities to maintain, to pay for them and to solicit the needs for that group. I mean, I remember going to I think Melanie was with me on that one. We went to the Parks and Cemetery Commission, and before we presented CPA, there was a softball group. Girls softball was asking about a softball pitch to be added to the Maple Avenue field. So, these groups do bring the need, and that's where.
By acknowledging the huge contributions, that if you look at Maple Ave, that softball field, I wouldn't call them dugouts, but the structures that cover the benches, those were built by a softball dad. And I suspect that Little League includes softball, probably raised the money for the supplies that he used. At Glavin Field, there's a shed that holds all the equipment that was built as an Eagle Scout project. So it's a nice place to acknowledge the contributions of a lot of private groups and citizens to support the recreation assets we have in town. But those are also folks that help us identify the needs for what else we need.
Right. So in my view, I think in the needs section, especially recreation, I think we should put in there that volunteer organizations and volunteers can only go so far, and really to get the needle moving on larger capital efforts, CPA is an opportunity to be able to fund those bigger projects to fill the needs of our community. Right. I don't want to move away from the fact that yes, while we definitely know in our town how to tap into volunteers and fundraise, but CPA monies are really there to be available to tap into, to make these things happen faster as well, right? And not have a fundraiser burnout.
Yeah, I was trying to look for when I could find. I was trying not to color it completely with my personal experience, but I don't know, penance or what. I spent 10 years on the board of Shrewsbury Youth Soccer, and I did chair the campaign to build the turf field at the high school. So, yeah, I know a little bit about volunteer burnout.
Exactly. All right. Anything else about 9 before we move on? You would need any other questions, comments you need from the group before?
If you think of anything else that we may have missed, Jim and I will be going over it and refining it. I mean, there's a lot more we can add. I don't know how long you really want it, but
it's okay to be long because this really is the background about, to let people know what is in Shrewsbury and what are our needs. Like this is the final case. So like the sections before it are really teeing you up the summary to read it, saying, oh great, CPA and what it's about and how do I get involved, blah blah. But this section really is the heart of the document about. We need to feel like we have an understanding about what our resources are and what are the needs of the community. And if that goes long, that's fine, because we have to support why we're spending all this money, right? This is
Gail made a great point earlier about tables, all this narrative and text and tables.
Oh, table, yeah. I mean, so like if there's a better way to deliver the message,
yeah,
that's fine. Yes.
Add a table of all the recreation assets that we have in the community, and I'll also try to make sure we have a complete list of all the adult and youth sports leagues that sports that take. I mean, there are walking groups as well. I mean, probably. Melanie, maybe you can think of something that reflects the work of the Trails Committee, and the goals of that should be included in this section as well, if we're going to consider our trails as part of our recreation. I know that I'm remiss in adding anything about that.
Well, in general, the Trails Committee would like to make more trails. And we'd like to have a connected trail system that would perhaps make a big loop around Shrewsbury, or in addition, connect to the neighboring towns. And there's also a interest in connecting to places that you might want to go. For instance, I have this little bee in my bonnet about getting to the Northborough Shopping Center through the woods. I know not everybody is, going to go to Wegmans to shop by walking through the woods, but it's nice to go out there and maybe have a coffee and come back. And that leads into the Northborough Trail System, incidentally. But I think connectivity, being able to walk a long distance. We really don't have a lot of mileage of trails. I think there's probably, of the trails that have been mapped, I don't think it's more than about 10 miles. Whereas I believe Northborough is running about 30 miles. They've been at it a long time. They're really good. They just have a huge amount of open space, but yeah.
So I think it'll be worth, Melanie, if you want to provide any feedback as well to Deborah and Jim.
Okay, I can
from a Trails Committee perspective.
Mm-hmm.
All right, from a passive recreation. All right, we're going to move on to number 10, historical preservation.
Number 10 was Steve and myself, and your comments prior to the other sections, Jason, helps a lot in kind of bringing the perspective and in place here, because I had a tough time on the historic preservation needs because they're so great. It was hard to figure out how to put them all down with making sense. So and as history is a narrative, that first part is pretty long. So if you feel as though that needs to be shortened, fine. But I really thought it was important that people understood that we have a rich historical background in Shrewsbury, and much of that has been lost just by neglect or disrespect, disinterest, whatever. So I think that the needs are very great. We've lost a lot. We still have some to protect, and the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be to identify those. So I think that the challenge, and I know Steve is interested in historical preservation as well. So I think we really have to kind of narrow in on that 10.2 section of the needs. That seemed to be a difficult thing for me to kind of collate. So this document is really just information that needs to be rearranged and reconfigured and put into something that is easily digested. I don't know what's missing from it, but that's where you guys can help out by if you think that there's something that hasn't been touched.
I certainly I really like the narrative that you provided there, but the historical context about General Ward and that narrative there. The only call that I have is that for 10.1, and you said it as well, right? But I think it's just make sure that as you tee up the introduction about our history, is that there's a little more uplift on what do we have left, and this is what we need to to help. I'm sorry, I should say this is obviously one is the what do we have, right? So just leaving it at that, right? What do we have? We've lost a lot, but this is what we have now.
Right.
And so, I could say, certainly make sure that, in my opinion, make sure that we should bring up the Shrewsbury Historical Society, because that's an opportunity to say that they're also caretakers of some of the treasures of Shrewsbury, historical aspects of Shrewsbury, including the 1830 building, the one-room schoolhouse that's remaining. They have a number of artifacts. A number of artifacts that they have in their cellar that's not being protected well, right? So that's it.
Right. I have referenced that in here a couple times.
Okay. Just note, Bernie is heading out. Rowan will remain on, and he will connect with Rowan in the morning about the remainder. Okay. Thank you, Bernie. I think somebody else had.
The part that is also difficult was under. We don't. The master plan reference preservation tools, but those tools have not been used. Nothing has followed. Even though they say the importance of a bylaw or the importance of this. They haven't been implemented. So I think that's probably one of the biggest needs is that the town has to focus on implementing what they've stated as a necessity under historic preservation, and it hasn't been happening. So maybe I don't know how you do that, but that's a big need.
Yeah, I think you're referring to the demolition bylaw.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
They reference really the only preservation tools we have are basically in the historic district, and that's minimal. There's no preservation bylaw, a demolition bylaw, and it is referenced in the master plan, but it's really not in place. So I think it was a goal, but never. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm reading it wrong, but it.
No, you're good. It's I think the objective here would be from a CPA perspective, what are the needs? CPA can't do anything about a demolition bylaw.
Right.
But you could mention if you really want to weave it into a narrative that other people kind of pick up and run with it. You could weave in saying if that bylaw was available, that could also be another avenue how we would have project proposals to use CPA monies for historic preservation. So that kind of just you can thread that needle to loop that in, because I know that's very important to you. And
Well-
it's also very important to historic preservation as an opportunity to preserve more.
Absolutely.
But always hook it at the end with it's got to be about how we can use money, CPA monies to protect. And it's not just those buildings, right? We also have artifacts that they can be leveraged.
Well,
So
Part of the preservation aspect is having time to put a plan in place, and that allows you the time. You know, if there's no time, if the Sumner House is going to be torn down and you don't have time to put a plan together for CPA to purchase it or whatever, then what do we do? You know, so there is a correlation
Yeah.
between the bylaw and preservation, CPA preservation.
yeah, I mean there is, but it's not exclusively, right? So historical society could come to next year and say, we have a copy of X, series of postcards. They're sitting in the basement and they're rotting now. And we want to have preservation on them. We don't have to have a bylaw.
Well, of course, yeah.
Right. I'm saying, so I mean, like, just make sure that this section is broad enough that it's not just about buildings, but it's also about artifacts of historical need to retain, and including the library, right? The library has a I believe,
Right.
a vault of stuff, so records. So, Kathy, you wanted to get in?
Just a quick comment about the eligibility chart. I think we either need to do an eligibility chart in each section, or we should move that to, I think, 4.2, which is determining project eligibility. So I'm not sure, but it makes sense that the same type of format would apply to each aspect.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The eligibility piece in the earlier section.
Yeah, well, no, this chart that's in here at 10.3, if we're going to keep it in this section, we should add one for the other sections. Is it not in 10.4, I guess, I'm sorry.
Yeah, at the end, right before 10.3. There it is.
Right here. So we should each do one in every section, or we should take it out of this section and just keep it in section 4.2.
Oh, I see. My personal view on it is to keep this here where it is now, because it's.
Well, we should probably have one in each section, don't you think?
Well, I know this came from the coalition as it's written on top. So the coalition hasn't provided any kind of graphic for each of the other groups, right? Open space, recreation, affordable housing. So in 4.3, that earlier section is really just broadly what is allowable, and perhaps what there. Who has that section? Let's see. Let's see. Regulation Act. Eligibility. Gail and Martha. So to terminate 4.2 sounds like it should have a note at the bottom of it to say, for a more detailed explanation of these, you can visit the section down below corresponding to that open space or recreation or historic preservation. Because when you get down to that section, it really is about explicitly, as I talk about affordable housing, right? It has to be, CPA purchased, right? Or supporting existing CPA, or supporting existing affordable housing units. So it's all that much more detail is best in the section that it's referencing. So like if a person is interested in getting a soccer field going, they don't really care about all the historic preservation part, right? They don't need to see all the eligibility. They don't be drowning in eligibility for historic preservation or affordable housing. They just go to that that respective section and then read about that specifically.
And that's what I'm saying. Should we have a chart like this in every single section? Like, should affordable housing, is there a chart? Like, I don't know, I'll have to go to the site to see if there is one for affordable housing, but assuming there's a similar process for each aspect.
I don't believe there is a chart like that, but certainly we could create one. I mean, you could create one if you'd like to see one, or draft it.
Okay.
But there isn't one like that.
Okay.
I think Martha's saying the same thing, right? Yeah. All right. So I think just as a takeaway, right, with Kathy's point, if there is something that can help the reader understand the gates of is this eligible, that it's not already created, but absolutely not created by the coalition, then if you want to conceive one, that's totally within, please do so to make it easier for the reader.
So going back to 4.2, are we needing to put something there? You made a comment about making a note.
Yeah, I think just make a reference there that for a more in-depth look at the eligibility for your project, please refer to the section relative to what your interests are.
Got it.
Thank you.
And Jason, just as Deborah did for me on an earlier section, Gail certainly pulled all the weight on this one. When I reached out to her, she was already probably on page 6. So she was way ahead of the game. So thank you so much, Gail. You did a wonderful job.
It's just a work in progress, like the other sections. This, like Jason said, this is the meat of it. So it's going to take some time to get all that formulated in the right order. So it's basically information being put down and then reworked. So
well, thank you for all your work.
You're not out of it yet, Steve.
All right, cool. Gail and Steve, is there anything else you need to know to help you move forward?
No, you covered it in the other open space and recreation, and those. So that helped a lot. That kind of gave me a little bit more direction.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Any comments? Anybody else before we move on?
I think our brains are kind of fried right now.
All right, Kathy, you're up.
Unmute, Kathy.
Sorry. I'll be brief. The housing piece was basically taken from 3 places. The housing production plan, and one of the things I really struggled with that, or we struggled with it, was developed in 2019. It's effective for 5 years, so 2019 to 2024. But the data they used to pull it was from 2012 to 2017. So I really feel like it's outdated. So I struggled with that. But shouldn't our plan reflect what is in the housing plan? So, and it does, but just wanted to point that out, that it doesn't seem logical to have this old information in it, but that's an aside. So existing conditions and resources just talks about the current housing stock. Demographics and characteristics, as I mentioned earlier, I think that needs to now come out because we're going to address it other places, although population household trends, I do think stays in here. Based on what Jason said before, some of it does need to be reworked. The affordable housing needs pretty much speak specifically to 40B, and that's where the other source I used was basically the 40B statute. So a lot of that came directly out of here. One inconsistency is the chart that was in our housing plan says we have 887 available housing units, but the current data from DHCD, which you can see, I think my notes in there, says that we have 4 more. So I don't know where those 4 units are. Rowan doesn't know either. So we're trying to find them. I'm thinking it's probably a group home. That would make sense. But so our goals are really to get more in line with having, our 10% and improve availability. And we talk a little bit about that. You can see I've got the numbers in there. There's one section in there about community housing, which is highlighted. And the reason that's highlighted is because I found that in the Watertown plan, but I can't find it in the statute. So I think if it's accurate, it's valuable information. It's a good point, and that's the one that speaks to the how you can provide grants and loans and rental assistance. But I just don't know if it's true, or I shouldn't say true, if it's correct. And then
Sorry, Kathy, we can just that's like when we get to that section you just brought up. What's this
I'm not
eligibility?
finding it. Am I? Oh, this one. You're
Yeah.
11-4. All right.
Yeah.
My
Sorry,
apologies.
I was going. I have it on my laptop, so I was scrolling pretty quick, probably faster than you were scrolling. So sorry about that.
Yes. Okay. So you may want to, Kathy, you may want to look at on the coalition's website. There's a whole like under technical assistance. There's a section, and this is of everybody actually. Just if you for your respective section, technical assistance, and then you'll see like common documents that they've like summarized together. And I think one of them I remember, Kathy, about like there was an article that came out, I think it was last year, right around beginning of COVID, saying can CPA monies be used for rental assistance, and
Okay.
and that's and that was just focusing on rental assistance, but there's enough like other smattering of other things you may want to pick up on in that technical assistance section of the website.
All right. Thank you. I'll check that. I didn't go to the coalition side. I don't know why it didn't occur to me. I basically just cited the housing plan 40B and 44B. So I do think one comment, this is very legalese because it's pretty much a cut and paste. So it needs to be, I don't know what word I'm looking for, not personalized, but just a little easier to read and not so cut and paste and so legal. So that's sort of step 2 in this process, is to make this not such a make it look like a lawyer didn't write it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we have a challenge, I don't have an answer either on this, is that when we get into the part about like, well, it needs to follow this chapter or it needs to follow the certain gates, like we need the flexibility to be able to just accept, to kind of bring the project on board, to hear the proposal, but we have to bring that, if it's not clear cut, we have to bring it to town council to review, to make sure that it really is aligned with what's allowed technically. So I think we have to balance out the legal aspects we add in here, right? So that we're not trying to represent legally what is allowed, because the wordsmithing can mean something, and the lawyers are paid the big bucks to make it written a certain way, right? If we undo the words, that we may be inadvertently changing the meaning. I think in my as I'm talking through it, I think it's, my view is to say, in general, this is how these are the requirements for this, and I think we all need to hear that, for our respective sections, that about eligibility is, your project will go under a review to ensure that it is allowable for CPA purposes. So funding allocation. So this way it gives, we're very transparent that, hey, just because it's written like this, it means that's the only, gateway, that we will have to comply to CPA to the fullest extent as we are feasibly allowed. So something like that. The words aren't coming out correctly at 9:08.
Right.
But
exactly.
we need to get a jail-free card when reviewing these projects, right? Okay, cool. Anything else you would like to know from the committee to help in this section?
No, just if there's any general comments, things that need to be changed.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Last section.
Kathy also largely did this without the use of her partner, me. So thank you, Kathy. You are the pro in this department.
So yeah, certainly, Steve and Deborah, as you go through your, but with your partners, definitely see from the perspective of like, if you're, you know, you're new to this section and saying, how do, you know, I'm reading this thing as a person in Shrewsbury, how would I raise a project? And does it make sense to you? I think that's also an opportunity to, you know, to give that, to bounce it, you know, bounce what's been written, if it makes sense to you. Okay. All right. So that concludes the walkthrough of this community preservation plans. So what we're doing from here now is, you know, further refine them. The current authors, please, you know, do so and modify the plans as we discussed through tonight. And if anything else you know kind of get stuck on, you know, please raise it through Rowan. Because ideally what we want to do is we want to get it on the agenda for the 5 statutory boards that you all represent. And the February's ideal. I think more, it sounds like based on tonight's conversation, we're probably looking more at March, but I don't think we should go any further than March because we want to have a public hearing in April to kind of get in line there. You know, if we push it out too long, we might be getting into a timing when people aren't available, don't care anymore, they go on holiday, right? Just a general question here. To get on the agenda for your respective boards and committees, is that something that, you know, do you want to just, you know, navigate that through, you know, take that agenda item and just work with your board to get on the agenda, or do you want to have, you know, let's say Rowan and Bernie, you know, see if, you know, how we can get slotted in? And Rowan has a point to make.
Oh, I do. I just want to jump in real quick because Bernie and I have been talking about this, and I believe he was going to introduce it, but I'll do my best. So I know that him and I were discussing putting together a small packet for you all to use as you present to the corresponding boards. And I know Bernie's working with Steve for the planning board in regards to that. But at this point, Bernie and I were planning to prepare a short memo explaining what this CPC is, what the CPA is, and what you all would be doing in front of the boards at whatever time you choose to attend the meetings. But we would also set you up with probably the Watertown plan as a sample plan for the other board members to take a look at, and then also any sections of the draft that you wanted to share. Although I do think, and perhaps we can have further discussion and guidance on this as well, but I don't know if it's really in the best interest for the board and committees to be reviewing line by line the drafts. Maybe more just being able to speak to what we have so far and what is most relevant for that board to hear. So, you know, as you know, I mean, I think it's clear what would be more suited to some boards than others. So that's what I just wanted to add. I would be happy to send out a month or 2 long calendar with the various boards and committee meetings that are scheduled for the next few months if you want to take a look. But I know most of you are the ones that are on the committees probably know when the committee meetings are. So I can leave it at that, but just to throw those out, that's what Bernie and I were hoping to discuss with you tonight.
Steve?
I was just basically going to say what Rowan had mentioned. Bernie and I had a conversation about this. So, excuse me, I think we'll come up with a plan. I know the planning board will likely have an open agenda item as kind of a new business or an old business item that gets captured on our general agenda. And we'll probably have that on for several months, you know, as this process continues to go down the line. And then as things start settling down, it'll be more of an ad hoc kind of thing. But there'll probably be more opportunity on a monthly basis in the planning board to at least give small updates as to what's going on. So for instance, if we have something that's happening in April, certainly have basically a community advertisement. Hey, by the way, April, whatever, there's going to be a forum being held. We're looking for soliciting feedback, talk about potentially the trainings for application process as we get closer to that time frame. So that will kind of be used as a sounding board as time moves on.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, that sounds like a good approach. Gail?
And likewise with the Historical Commission, I have been giving them basic updates as to what is the plan is, what we're doing and where we are at it. So they're pretty much in line with what's going on. A formal plan obviously has not been presented, but they're, every month I do give them a little update as to what we've done and where we are. They're very anxious to know when the money will be allocated. So to be announced. I haven't given them too much on that. I don't want to disappoint them too much, but they're all anxious.
All right, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments relative to the communication plan or anything else upcoming that you'd like to ask now at this point before we adjourn? Okay, cool. All right, well, that concludes our night. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion has been made and seconded, and I have to go through roll call. So when I call you, please let me know how you vote on this. Deborah?
Yes.
Okay. Melanie?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yeah.
And myself, yes. And that is a wrap. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
See you
Have a
next
great
Thank
night.
you.
Bye now.
Yeah, good
Night.
night.
Rowan, I don't know how to get out. I never use this this app. Just end it.